As I'm recording this, I just got done having a little bit of a conversation, when I say conversation, online, typing back and forth, with somebody that had some track work scheduled for the day, specifically doing 800 meters. But their question was, how am I going to do this when I've got to be indoors today because of the elements outside? And it's one of these funky indoor tracks. It's not like a track like somebody would use in a track meet. It was more like something like 9.5 laps per mile or something like that. You know, what's going to be better to do? To use my Garmin to guess what 800 meters is? Because at least in my experience, Garmin's aren't very accurate indoors. Footpods can be, but the Garmin accelerometer, at least in my experience, is not. Or to try and kind of guesstimate what that is. And I said, actually, you don't really need to do either, because here's the reality. You've heard me say this many times before, is that it's not about distance, it's about duration. It's not about pace, it's about intensity. The only reason we use miles, the only reason we use paces is to make it a little bit easier sometimes to figure out what that duration and intensity should be. But honestly, you can do everything by duration and intensity. So I thought I'd give you an example of how that might work with speed work, because I think that's a really common thing that people are going to be on a treadmill, which you've probably heard me say before. Treadmills aren't particularly accurate, or stuck indoors on some type of thing that's kind of a quasi-distance. So here's my speed work example. So if I'm giving somebody speed work to do, the first thing I decide is how long do I want their intervals to be. And for me, generally speaking, the interval's not going to be any shorter than a minute, and generally speaking, it's not going to be any longer than 5 minutes. There's certainly times where those aren't true, but as a rule of thumb, like 1 to 5 minutes. So let's say in this particular case, I say I want the speed work each interval to be 4 minutes. Variety of reasons for that, but I'm picking 4 minutes in this particular case. So that's the duration I want, is 4 minutes. The next thing I look at is, well, what's the total amount of time I want them to be in that zone doing those intervals? Generally speaking, again, I'm not going to do speed work for less than 10 minutes of total time, usually not much more than 20 minutes of total time. That varies. There's times for less, there's times for more. Usually it's 10 to 20 minutes. In this particular case, I've said, okay, I want 15 minutes. So getting back to durations, I want each one of them to be about 3 minutes or 4, I think I said 3 minutes in duration, and I want to get a total amount of about 15 minutes of that amount of work. So the way that would work is, let's say this particular person, that their 800 meter time is about 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Then what I would do is tell that person, I want you to do 5 by 800 meters. That's going to give them 16 minutes, which is really close to the 15 minutes I was looking at. But the way I got to that 5 by 800 was starting with the duration and the volume I wanted. So it would actually be every bit as easy to simply say, hey, do 5 by 3 minutes at a 5K effort. And I define a 5K effort as it's a words pace, meaning you can talk, you don't want to, and when you can talk, all you can do is spit out a word or two before you need to take a breath. I think people kind of know what a 5K effort is. And that's going to be every bit as effective for your training as having this very specific distance and this very specific time, because training is really about duration and intensity.